The ancient landscapes of Europe and Asia, covered with glaciers and dense forests, held a secret that changes our understanding of human history. Tens of thousands of years ago, not only our direct ancestors roamed these lands, but also other equally developed human species. Among them, Neanderthals, creatures that have long been presented as rude and primitive. However, modern scientific discoveries paint a very different picture of their lives, and even more shockingly, their relationship with Homo sapiens. Documentaries and textbooks often simplify this complex story by focusing on the triumphant ascent of a single species. But behind this familiar version lies a deep, sometimes disturbing truth. Genetic evidence and archaeological evidence inexorably indicate that the paths of these two branches of humanity intersected not only in competition, but also in much more intimate interactions. This story is not about how one species defeated another in a pure fight for survival. It's about unexpected encounters, a genetic exchange, and a mysterious disappearance that still causes controversy. Are you ready to learn how the blood of an extinct species runs in the veins of most people on Earth? And what ancient secrets your own DNA holds? Get ready for a journey into the past that will change your ideas about evolution. For a long time, Neanderthals were portrayed as primitive, clumsy creatures, a kind of dead-end branch of evolution, inferior to Homo sapiens in intelligence and adaptability. However, recent archaeological discoveries and reinterpretations of old data paint a completely different portrait. Neanderthals were an incredibly advanced species that successfully adapted to the harsh conditions of the ice ages of Europe and Western Asia for hundreds of thousands of years. Their physical build, strong and muscular, with massive bones and a broad chest, was perfectly adapted to the cold climate. Research shows that Neanderthals had powerful intelligence. They created the complex stone tools of the Mousterian culture, which required a high level of planning and skill. These tools were not just survival tools, but also evidence of their cognitive abilities. Moreover, Neanderthals displayed complex social behaviors. Archaeologists have found evidence of caring for the sick and elderly, which indicates a developed altruism and compassion within groups. The famous discovery of the old man from Shanidar, a Neanderthal with multiple severe injuries, who survived and lived for many years in the care of his fellow tribesmen, is a clear confirmation of this. They buried their dead, often using flowers and funerary gifts, indicating the presence of symbolic thinking, rituals, and perhaps even a belief in an afterlife. This is radically different from the image of soulless savages that has been imposed for decades. Some studies also suggest that Neanderthals may have used primitive forms of speech. Although their vocal apparatus was different from ours, findings of a hyoid bone similar to a human's and analysis of the hearing aid indicate the ability to perceive and reproduce complex sounds. This opens the door to the idea that they could communicate at a level sufficient to coordinate complex activities such as corral hunting and to transfer knowledge. The discovery of Neanderthal ornaments made from eagle claws and feathers, as well as the use of pigments to paint the body or cave walls, indicates the development of an aesthetic sense and the ability to think abstractly. They didn't just survive, they created and made sense of the world around them. How deeply were we mistaken in our ideas about these ancient people, considering them only a stepping stone on our path and not a separate, unique, and incredibly complex civilization? If you want to find out how their world collided with ours, watch this video to the end. Approximately 60,000 to 70,000 years ago, after Homo sapiens left the African continent, they began to cross paths with Neanderthals. It was not a single meeting, but a series of meetings that spanned thousands of years. The first contacts probably took place in the Middle East, which served as a kind of bridge between Africa and Eurasia. Neanderthals have lived for hundreds of thousands of years in this region and in Europe, perfectly adapted to local conditions. The climate at that time was changeable. Periods of warming gave way to ice ages, forcing populations to migrate in search of food and more favorable conditions. It is these climatic variations that probably led to direct contacts between the two species. Groups of Homo sapiens moving north and west encountered Neanderthal communities that lived in these territories. Imagine those moments when two very different, yet so similar human species first looked at each other, realizing or not realizing the significance of this meeting for the future of all of humanity. The nature of these encounters remains a subject of scientific debate. Were they exceptionally hostile, filled with competition for resources and territories? Or did they include peaceful interactions such as sharing technology, knowledge, and even social contacts? Archaeological evidence does not provide a definitive answer. There are known places where both types of tools are found in the same layers, which can indicate both coexistence and conflict. Some researchers suggest that Homo sapiens may have adopted Neanderthal survival skills in harsh European environments, such as big game hunting techniques or skinning techniques. It wasn't just physical contact, but a clash of two different worldviews and survival strategies. Neanderthals, as native inhabitants of cold regions, had unique knowledge of the local flora and fauna, methods of building shelters, and hunting strategies that could prove invaluable to the African Homo sapiens. In turn, Homo sapiens may have brought with them new technologies, such as better throwing spears or perhaps more advanced social structures that allow for larger and more efficient hunting groups. Such exchanges, whether peaceful or forced, could be a powerful catalyst for evolutionary change in both species. These interactions were not just a meeting of two different species, but a clash of two unique cultures and adaptive strategies, each honed by millennia of evolution. What was the first handshake, or perhaps the first collision of two different human worlds? History has left us with no direct evidence, but science is getting closer to answering this question, which has turned the ideas about our origin upside down. Do you want to know what really happened? Keep watching. The most startling and simultaneously shocking discovery about the interaction of Homo sapiens and Neanderthals came not from archaeological excavations, but from the depths of our own cells. At the beginning of the 21st century, thanks to the development of paleogenetics and the sequencing of ancient DNA, it became irrefutably clear Neanderthals and Homo sapiens interbred, and their genetic heritage lives in us to this day. The project to decode the Neanderthal genome, led by Swedish scientist Svante Pääbo from the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology, was a real breakthrough. In 2010, it was announced that the genomes of modern non-African populations contain between 1% and 4% Neanderthal DNA. This means that after Homo sapiens left Africa, when they met Neanderthals in the Middle East and Europe, there were repeated cases of interspecific interbreeding between them. This fact in itself has already upended decades of scientific dogmas that described human evolution as a linear process with the net displacement of one species by another. The discovery shattered long-held beliefs that Neanderthals were a separate, isolated species, unrelated to our ancestors. It showed that, despite the differences, there was enough genetic compatibility between them to produce fertile offspring. What's more, subsequent studies have found traces of another ancient human, the Denisovan, who also interbred with Homo sapiens, leaving his mark on the genomes of some Asian and Melanesian populations. This indicates a complex pattern of hybridization, where different branches of the genus Homo repeatedly exchange genetic material. The very fact of interspecific interbreeding raises many questions about the nature of these interactions. Were they random, or were there more regular social connections? Were these encounters acts of violence, forced cohabitation, or even acts of curiosity and attraction? Given that Neanderthals and Homo sapiens were different species, although closely related, the successful interbreeding and survival of their offspring capable of reproduction was not such a frequent event. However, it has occurred frequently enough to leave a significant mark on our genome. Scientists suggest that interbreeding may have occurred during periods when groups were small and the ability to find a mate within their own species was limited. Imagine these ancient, fateful encounters that changed the genetic landscape of humanity forever. This Neanderthal genetic signature in our DNA is not just a scientific curiosity, it is a living testimony to the complex intertwining history of mankind, where there were no simple lines of development. Our ancestors didn't just displace or destroy other hominin species. They interacted with them, exchanging not only technology, but also genetic information itself. Some studies show that interbreeding occurred not just once, but several times in different regions. How would your self-image change if you realize that each of us is a living hybrid, carrying the legacy of long-extinct species? This is not just a story, it is a genetic imprint that is in each of us. This knowledge brings a fresh perspective on the concept of purity of a race or species, demonstrating how deeply we are all connected to our ancient past. Do you want to know how these ancient genes affect your life today? Keep watching. The Neanderthal legacy in the Homo sapiens genome is not just a statistical figure. It manifests itself in specific traits and predispositions that still affect us today. These genes, derived from ancient interbreeding, have become both a blessing and a curse, providing our ancestors with advantages, but also creating new vulnerabilities. This dual legacy is one of the most intriguing aspects of human evolution. One of the most studied aspects is the effect of Neanderthal genes on the immune system. It is assumed that these genes helped Homo sapiens, who came from Africa, to adapt to new pathogens common in Eurasia. Neanderthals, who lived there for hundreds of thousands of years, developed immunity to local viruses and bacteria, and the transfer of these genes through interbreeding gave Homo sapiens ready-made solutions to deal with new threats. For example, some variants of the genes responsible for receptors for viral infections came to us from Neanderthals. However, this adaptation also had a downside. Some of these immune genes, which were useful in ancient times, are now associated with an increased risk of developing autoimmune diseases such as type 2 diabetes, Crohn's disease, systemic lupus erythematosus, and even increased sensitivity to allergens. It turns out that ancient immunity may be the cause of modern suffering, a kind of genetic payback for survival. Do you want to know what other diseases we inherited from Neanderthals and how it affects your life right now? Other Neanderthal genes affect skin and hair features. For example, some gene variants that regulate pigmentation may have helped Homo sapiens adapt more quickly to the less intense sunlight of northern latitudes, helping to synthesize vitamin D. This could be critical for survival in colder, less sunny regions. Studies show that Neanderthal alleles are also associated with an increased risk of sunburn and other reactions to UV radiation. Some scientists attribute the Neanderthal heritage to a denser hair structure, which may have provided additional protection from the cold, as well as a tendency to thicker body hair. In this way, your skin and hair can be a living reminder of the ancient ancestors who once roamed the icy expanses. More controversial are hypotheses about the influence of non-Neanderthal genes on the morphology of the skull, the shape of the nose, the tendency to certain mental disorders, such as depression or nicotine addiction, as well as on the features of circadian rhythms, that is, sleep and wake patterns. These are complex and actively researched areas where causal relationships have yet to be fully established. But the very fact of such correlations is already deeply striking. Some studies even suggest a link between Neanderthal genes and an increased tendency to form blood clots. Some scientists also suggest that Neanderthal genes may have contributed to the development of certain metabolic benefits, such as improved fat absorption and more efficient energy storage, which was useful in the context of a lean Ice Age diet and irregular nutrition. However, in today's world, with an abundance of calories and a sedentary lifestyle, this can contribute to the accumulation of excess weight and increase the risk of obesity. Thus, what was an evolutionary advantage for survival in harsh antiquity has become a hidden genetic time bomb for modern humans living in conditions of abundance. This Neanderthal genetic legacy is a stark reminder that evolution doesn't always follow a straight line. It is a complex network of interactions where every step, every meeting leaves its mark, sometimes not obvious, but at the same time deeply embedded in the very structure of our being. One of the greatest mysteries of the Paleolithic remains the disappearance of Neanderthals about 40,000 years ago, shortly after their widespread contact with Homo sapiens. What was the reason for their final departure from the historical scene? Were they displaced, destroyed, or did their fate turn out to be much more complicated due to genetic exchange? This question haunts scientists, and the answers they find are sometimes shocking. There are several main hypotheses, and each of them, to some extent, takes into account the factor of interaction with Homo sapiens. Climate change. One of the old theories holds that Neanderthals failed to adapt to the abrupt and frequent climate changes of the last ice ages, known as Heinrich events. However, new data show that Neanderthals were quite adaptive and experienced many climatic fluctuations before the arrival of Homo sapiens. However, changes in ecosystems may have reduced their food supply, which weakened their populations, making them more vulnerable. Competition with Homo sapiens. This hypothesis suggests that Homo sapiens were more successful in using resources, had more efficient hunting technologies, developed social structures, and a higher population density. They may have outperformed Neanderthals in competition for food and territory, gradually displacing them or even entering into direct conflicts. Archaeological evidence points to the technological superiority of Homo sapiens in some aspects, such as the use of throwing weapons, which allowed hunting at a distance, reducing the risk. Was this displacement a slow strangulation or a quick, brutal struggle for survival? The assimilation hypothesis. This is one of the most intriguing theories that is directly related to interbreeding. It suggests that Neanderthals did not become extinct in the literal sense of the word, but were absorbed by a larger and faster-growing population of Homo sapiens through interspecific interbreeding. As the number of Homo sapiens grew and Neanderthals declined, the proportion of Neanderthal genes in mixed populations gradually decreased until they dissolved, leaving only a genetic trace. This means that Neanderthals did not disappear, but became a part of us. A special aspect of the assimilation hypothesis is reproductive barriers. Studies show that Neanderthal genes associated with male fertility were almost completely purged from the Homo sapiens genome, which may indicate that hybrid males were less fertile or even sterile. If this is the case, then despite successful interbreeding, the flow of Neanderthal genes in Homo sapiens was one-sided or limited, which made the assimilation process slow and led to the gradual extinction of purely Neanderthal lines. This is not just the extinction of a species. It is a tragedy played out at the genetic level, where nature itself dictated its own rules, preventing the complete merger of two species. Other factors are also considered, such as the vulnerability of Neanderthals to new diseases brought by Homo sapiens from Africa, or possible differences in the organization of work and use of resources. For example, less social mobility and a tendency to live in smaller groups may have made Neanderthals more vulnerable to demographic crises. What if the extinction of the Neanderthals is not a victory, but a tragic consequence of genetic mixing that doomed them to dissolve into another species, making them part of what they could not fully become? The history of Neanderthals and their interactions with Homo sapiens is not just dry textbook facts. It's a deep, multi-layered saga of survival, adaptation, cultural exchange, and perhaps genetic absorption that changed the fate of all of humanity. We learned that Neanderthals were not primitive savages, but highly developed creatures with a complex culture and intelligence. Their world collided with the world of our ancestors, and this encounter left an indelible imprint on our own DNA. The genetic heritage of Neanderthals found in the genomes of most non-African people suggests that our history is much more complex than we used to think. It is a living reminder of the ancient alliances and complex evolutionary paths that led to the emergence of modern man. These genes influence our immune system, our appearance, and even our predisposition to certain diseases, proving that the past runs in our veins. The mystery of the disappearance of Neanderthals continues to worry scientists, and the role of interbreeding in this process remains the subject of active research. Were they assimilated, or did genetic barriers eventually lead to their extinction? Regardless of the final answer, their legacy lives on, making each of us a living witness to the incredible and sometimes dark truth of the science of human evolution. This story makes us think about what it means to be human and how the fates of different species are intertwined. Realizing that part of you is a Neanderthal changes everything, isn't it? If this video has made you wonder about your own origins and the amazing history of humanity, subscribe to our channel to discover even more shocking facts and profound truths about our past.